The slap came so fast I didn't even flinch. Not because I'm tough, but because I saw it coming 2 seconds before it landed. Her hand, thin and bony, cracked across my cheek loud enough to silence the dining room. Her guests froze. Her husband coughed into his napkin like that would cover the noise. My wife didn't gasp. She didn't check if I was all right. She didn't even blink. Instead, she just said, "Apologize." To her mother. I was still looking at my wine glass when she said it. Didn't look up. Didn't even move. Just felt the sting settle into my jaw and tasted the iron behind my teeth. Apologize. The word rang through me like a command. Not a request. A command. From my wife. To me. For her mother hitting me. I was 2 seconds away from walking out. But I didn't. Not yet. I smiled instead. Let me rewind 20 minutes. We were halfway through a family dinner at her parents' estate. Long table, 2 rows of faces, everyone dressed like it was Easter Mass. Her mother, Eleanor, held court at the head. I was seated at the far end. On purpose. They never liked me. I knew that. I wasn't old money. I didn't come from a name. I worked my way up from tech support to CTO at a firm they'd never heard of. Eleanor called it computer stuff whenever she introduced me. I married their daughter, Natalie, 6 years ago. Back then, she was fresh out of law school and convinced love mattered more than pedigree. I believed her. Tonight was her mother's birthday. 62. There were toasts, catered lobster, a small string quartet hired to play softly over the sound of condescension. And then Eleanor made a comment. She used to date that Winthrop boy, remember? Harvard, finance, brilliant. I wonder what happened to him. Her smile was aimed at me. I replied, calmly, she married someone better. That's when Eleanor slapped me. It was instinct, not rage. The kind of slap that says, you're not allowed to speak like that in my house. Then Natalie said it. Apologize. The silence dragged. Then I stood. Not fast. Deliberate. I adjusted my cuffs, took a slow breath, and nodded. I will, I said. But not the way you expect. Natalie frowned. Eleanor looked satisfied. She assumed I meant groveling. Reconciliation. Manners. I looked around the table. Her brother with the failing gym franchise. Her sister with 3 failed engagements. Her father with his 3rd scotch and a losing portfolio. And I smiled. To everyone here, I said, I apologize. I'm sorry you all think this family still holds the power it did 30 years ago. I'm sorry you believe money equals superiority, when most of yours is tied up in illiquid assets and bad credit. Eleanor's lips parted, shocked. I'm sorry, I continued, that I let it go this long. That I stayed quiet while you made jokes, disrespected me, and treated me like a placeholder while pretending Natalie married beneath her. My wife's mouth opened. Closed. No one interrupted. But mostly, I said, eyes on Eleanor now. I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the slim black folder I'd kept with me all evening. No one noticed it. No one ever notices the quiet man at the table until it's too late. I walked down the length of the table and placed it gently in front of her. She looked at it like it was poison. She wasn't far off. Inside were documents, contracts, filings, screenshots. Eleanor's consulting business, the one she bragged about every holiday, had been surviving off undisclosed investments. Mine, under a different name, funneled through 2 holding companies. Acquired 2 years ago when I realized what Natalie was turning into, a mirror of her mother. Cold, calculated, entitled. I watched Eleanor's hands tremble as she flipped through the pages. Her face drained of color as she recognized my signature. The same one that revoked her operating rights. Froze her corporate account. You're lying, she whispered. I shook my head. I've been preparing this for 6 months. Your employees were notified this morning. You'll get the final notice tomorrow. Natalie stood up fast, voice sharp. What the hell are you doing? Exactly what you told me to, I said calm. Apologizing. The room was still. Eleanor, I said, you struck me in front of your family. I could press charges, but that's not my style. Instead, I'll let you explain to them why your business is under audit. Why your savings are frozen pending investigation. Why you can't sell off assets that aren't legally in your name anymore. Her husband rose, angry. You're bluffing. I turned to him. Check your brokerage accounts. As of this morning, your holdings in Meridian Trust were bought out by a subsidiary I control. You've been trying to dump them for 6 months, right? His face dropped. Natalie moved toward me, face red with fury. You planned this? You used me? No, I said. I loved you. Until I realized you stopped loving me the moment your mother's approval meant more than my respect. She tried to speak. I didn't let her. This dinner, I said, was my final test. I wanted to see if there was anything left worth salvaging. I looked at her then. Really looked. Her expression wasn't confused. It was betrayed. But not because of the slap or the fallout. Because I beat them at their own game. You failed, I said, stepping away from the table. Then I turned, walked to the door, and left. Not in anger. In control. Always in control. By the time I got to my car, I'd already received the first call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. 10 minutes later, another call, this time from Natalie's number. I ignored that one too. I drove 3 blocks, parked under a shadowy oak near the river, and opened the app. The dashboard glowed on my screen. Multiple account movements, flagged transactions, a single large wire initiated at 8:02 p.m., exactly when Eleanor opened the folder. Panic transfer. Blocked. I had installed contingencies 6 weeks ago. Every potential move Eleanor could make was tracked, mirrored, or intercepted. The transfer bounced. The error message read, "Account hold pending legal inquiry." She would see it, then realize just how deep this went. My lawyer, Barnes, messaged 2 words, "It's begun." I leaned back and watched the river for a while. There was no satisfaction, not yet. Just clarity. I hadn't destroyed anyone. I'd simply removed the scaffolding that kept them pretending they were untouchable. By midnight, I had 12 voicemails, 4 from Natalie, 3 from Eleanor, the rest from her brother, and some unknown numbers that probably belonged to trust lawyers or PR consultants. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I opened the next file. Natalie's boutique, a vanity project I'd funded in year 2 of our marriage. Back then, I believed in her vision. I believed she'd outgrow the need for her mother's approval. She didn't. The boutique was bleeding money. But the leases were in my name, the payroll funded through a side account she didn't know I controlled, and her supply chain routed through a firm I quietly acquired last spring. The moment she screamed across the table, that chain collapsed. No inventory. No vendor support. No shipments. Natalie was about to learn what it felt like to stand on air and realize the floor had been pulled days ago. She texted just after 2 a.m. "You planned this. You waited for tonight. Why?" I didn't reply. The answer wasn't rage. It was precision. I needed witnesses. I needed the moment to be unforgettable. That's why I let her mother slap me. That's why I stood up calmly. Because now they'd all remember who held the leash. The next morning, I checked the news. Local business Scion under investigation. Sources say internal coup and financial mismanagement at Beaumont and Company. They used her maiden name. Not mine. Never mine again. An hour later, Barnes confirmed that Eleanor's board had voted her out. The consulting firm's assets were frozen. Her speaking engagements, gone. Her sponsorships, revoked. The moment I pulled the plug, the sharks smelled blood. Natalie wasn't spared either. The boutique's closure spread across industry blogs within 48 hours. Photos of her tear-streaked face outside a shuttered storefront hit Twitter by noon. Comments were brutal. "Another nepotism project goes under." "Designer meltdown caught live." Her social media went silent. Her brand ambassador deals terminated by end of day. One platform even flagged her profile for fraudulent sponsorship claims. I watched all of it from my office, a sleek corner unit downtown, leased under an LLC she didn't know I owned. The irony was satisfying. I had moved out 6 weeks before dinner, rented a furnished place, staged everything to seem like I still lived at home, left just enough traces to keep her complacent. She never noticed. Control doesn't look like rage. It looks like order, discipline, timing. By the 3rd day, Natalie's father called me. First time in 6 years he ever used my number directly. "You've made your point," he said. "Now what?" I sipped my coffee. "Now? Nothing." "You've humiliated them." "No," I said. "They did that themselves. I just showed the world what was already there." He didn't respond. Just exhaled into the phone like a man who suddenly realized the castle was made of paper. "She loved you," he said finally. "No. She loved what I gave her access to. That's different." He hung up. 3 hours later, Natalie showed up at my office. Security called ahead. I let her through. She looked different, exhausted, pale, eyes ringed with red. The woman who once measured her worth in curated photos and brand deals now looked like she'd walked out of a war zone. You set us up, she said. No hello. No greeting. Just the accusation. No, I replied. I gave you time. You spent it pretending you were still the victim. You let my mother hit you. I let her reveal herself, I said. Big difference. She stared at me. I thought you were better than this. I am, I said. That's why I'm not pressing charges. That's why I'm not taking this public. That's why you still have a car in your name and an apartment lease good for another month. That's your grace period. Her voice cracked. You planned this. I hoped I wouldn't need to, I said. But I built it anyway. Because I saw where you were headed. Because I loved you. And loving you meant being ready for the day you decided that wasn't enough. She sank into the chair across from me. So what now? I folded my hands. Now you decide what kind of person you'll be without the illusion of being special. She looked away. I'll send the divorce papers tomorrow, I said. They've been ready for a month. All assets are divided. No lawsuits. No counters. No more masks. She didn't fight it. And that told me everything. The divorce was finalized in 21 days. No court fights. No PR spin. No desperate last-minute pleas. Natalie signed without contest. She knew there was nothing left to fight for. The prenup, we updated 2 years into the marriage. Something her mother insisted she slip past me during a wine-fueled weekend. Had a quiet clause I added through my attorney. One she never read. One that activated when any family member of hers became financially dependent on me for more than 12 consecutive months. It gave me asset protection. Retroactive. So while she thought she was outmaneuvering me, I was quietly rerouting every shared venture into protected territory. I didn't just prepare for betrayal. I documented it, filed it, notarized it, and wrapped it in a bow. I left her the car. I let her keep her name. Everything else, gone. 3 weeks after the papers cleared, I disappeared. Not in a dramatic way. No cryptic social media posts, no long goodbyes. I changed cities, changed firms. I sold my stake in the company she never knew I co-founded under an alias. Liquidated, tax-sheltered, and funneled through a new fund, one with zero ties to the past. Some people asked what happened. I said it ended. That's all. The world didn't need to know more. I wasn't looking for validation. I was looking for quiet, for the sound of my own life returning. 6 months later, I walked into a networking event in Chicago. Different name, different suit, same eyes. A woman approached me during the cocktail hour. Smart, quiet confidence. Her business pitch was tight, her numbers cleaner than most I'd seen in years. She wasn't flashy. She didn't brag. She asked sharp questions and listened harder than she spoke. At the end of her pitch, she handed me a card. I looked at it and said, "You're the first person tonight who didn't ask what I used to do." She smirked. "I don't care who you were. I care who you are now." That stuck with me. We talked for 2 hours. Not about love. Not about pain. Just ideas. Business. Vision. She left without asking for anything. A week later, I invested in her startup. 2 months after that, we met again. No pressure, no stories. Just a conversation between two people who'd both learned how much silence can reveal. Meanwhile, back home, the Beaumonts were crumbling. Eleanor tried to claw back control through litigation. She lost. The forensic audit uncovered multiple instances of misappropriation. Natalie's father was forced to sell property just to cover legal bills. Natalie moved to a smaller apartment. Started working retail to stay afloat. I heard she filed a rebranding page under her maiden name. One of those personal reinvention things. She never reached out again. I wouldn't have responded anyway. Because when I walked away, I didn't just leave the marriage. I left the version of myself that tolerated disrespect, that played small to keep the peace, that apologized to stay in the room. Now I walk in, own the room, and decide who gets to stay. Revenge wasn't the goal. It was the side effect of building a life where people like them never get close again. And the slap? I still remember it. Not with anger, not with pain, but with precision. Because the hand that struck me was the one that gave me permission to burn everything down and start again, cleaner, smarter, untouchable. No theatrics, no fire, just silence, and the sound of a door that finally stayed closed.